Very good afternoon to all participants on the platform. Thank you for joining this webinar today on AI leadership. Welcome to the National School of Government as we embark on this very exciting webinar this afternoon. We are pleased to be joined by our partners with Microsoft as well as NetCampus Group. So thank you for accepting the invitation to be part of this and to be in the room with us today. My name is Dino Punsami. I am the Chief Director in the National School of Government, and you would have seen the program being flighted for this afternoon's event. We are quite excited about this as the National School of Government, certainly because building the capabilities of our state is quite important. Let me also take this opportunity to indicate our fellow colleagues who are here for the webinar. We have the Deputy Director General, Dr. Lakela Kaunda, from the National School of Government, who will welcome us this afternoon. And then, of course, we have Mr. Trevor Jones, who will be taking us through for the remaining 3 hours of the webinar, focusing on artificial intelligence, particularly on its history, the evolution, and some of the concepts. So we really hope that you will enjoy this session with us. We do have a chat functionality. Please post your questions there. If we do have the time with Trevor, we will try and go through as many questions as we can that he'll be able to respond. On that note, let me invite the Deputy Director General, Dr. Lakela Kaunda, to officially open the session and welcome all of you.
Thank you very much to my colleague, Dino Punsami. And it is my pleasure and honor to extend a warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today. Thank you very much for choosing the NSG, and your joining us indicates the importance with which you attach the management and leadership of artificial intelligence in our country. As we know, one of the key priorities of our 7th administration is growing the economy and driving inclusive growth, which must lead to job creation. And artificial intelligence and digital skills and also are very, very critical in developing the skills of public servants to assist government towards that goal. Today is also very important for us because we are firming up our relationship with Microsoft, and therefore I'm happy that we have Mr. Trevor Jones, who has joined us today, who's going to be leading this session for us. It's also important for us because you will recall that last week our President Ramaphosa, joined the President of Microsoft, Mr. Brad Smith, in Johannesburg, where Microsoft was announcing a very big investment, 5.4 billion rand investment in a data center for Microsoft. It was an important day, I must also indicate, for the National School of Government because we received an honorable mention in the President's speech, which was quite a beautiful surprise because he announced an MOU between the that will be signed between an MOU between the National School of Government, Microsoft, and NEMISA, the National Electronic Media Institute of South Africa. So today is indicative that we're already implementing that partnership. We are moving ahead with the partnership to develop the much needed skills in the public sector. We're happy as well. Most of you know the National School of Government and its importance in the third priority of government, which is building an ethical developmental state. We have a big footprint now. We're no longer only focusing on appointed public servants at national level. It's all 3 spheres of government, organs of state, traditional leaders, the private sector. So we are happy that you are joining this family and that you are part of that family. This is the first of a series of related webinars, and Trevor Jones will take you through and you will know what else we will be doing. We'll be inviting you to more sessions. For now, just relax, enjoy the session. I'm happy to declare it open. Thank you very much, Dino.
Thank you very much to Dr. Kaunda. Much appreciated for those words. And colleagues, you would have noted that as Dr. Kaunda mentioned, it is something that the president has spoken about with regard to the partnership with Microsoft. And we are quite keen as the National School of Government to take forward this, this relationship together with some of the other partners. Let me take this opportunity to invite Mr. Trevor Jones. He's got the rest of the afternoon with us and will be able to take us through the various aspects, the modules around artificial intelligence. Trevor, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dino. If you would just bear with me a second, I just need to go ahead and share my desktop. It's going to be a jam-packed day, and I've got a lot of things that I'd like to share with you. So I think that should probably do it. If you don't mind, if you can just give me an indication that you can see my desktop. It should be a slide that says, what is artificial intelligence? All right, that looks good.
Yes, we can see it.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to try my best to stick to the agenda that I've been given. I do see that I've already been allocated a little bit of extra time, which is fantastic. The more time I have to talk, I think the better for me. So when I was sitting down and thinking about the presentation and thinking about the agenda, I was wondering, where to start, what to do. And whenever I'm stuck with a decision like that, I like to ask people that I trust. And there's nobody that I trust more than, of course, my wife. And she's a business leader. She's a strategic business leader with a very large enterprise in South Africa. And I asked her, how are you guys in your business? How are you leveraging artificial intelligence? And she looked at me with these big eyes and she said, well, we don't even know what artificial intelligence is. So it's very difficult for us to leverage anything that we don't understand. And it's not like the IT department is not capable. Of course, the IT department is capable, certainly more capable than most IT departments. It's just the business does not understand that the impact that artificial intelligence is going to have on their business. Not even in the future, but the impact that it's going to have on their business today and tomorrow. So I thought of doing a little presentation to their company, just to familiarize themselves with artificial intelligence and perhaps look at what the capabilities of artificial intelligence would be, and perhaps how they could leverage artificial intelligence in their organization. And that turned into a much deeper conversation about what are the different types of artificial intelligence that's out there? Because they've heard of some of these things, but for example, they've heard of something called machine learning, but they have no idea of machine learning. And they've heard about neural networks, but they don't know what neural networks are. So I thought it would be great just to create a simple little presentation and show them what they're missing out on. And I think that presentation is very appropriate for the first session that I get to host. It's a brief introduction to artificial intelligence. And if you have access to the program, it's program item number 3. And I think what I'll do is I'll just kick off with that program item. I'm happy that I have a little bit of extra time because it can take quite a while to get to grips with some of these terms and terminologies. So that should take us through until about 2 o'clock. And after 2 o'clock, what we'll do is we'll start looking at a very brief history of AI. I mean, AI has a long history, and to be honest, we could go all the way back to the 1600s. But I thought it would be more appropriate to focus on the near past rather than the ancient past. So I'll take you through a little guide on the history of artificial intelligence and the development thereof. And that'll take us probably from about 2 to 2:30. And then from 2:30, what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about ethics and safety. I'm more more inclined to talk about ethics, but of course, along with ethics, we have safety. And as part of that, I thought it would be great for us to look at some practical applications of artificial intelligence. So that should take us from about 2:30 to I think it's about 3:30. So that's maybe an hour. Maybe I can steal a little bit of time there. And then the final thing that I want to do is going to be from 3:30 till just before 4 o'clock. This is a really, it's a Microsoft sponsored event, and I would feel guilty, I would feel bad if I didn't do a demonstration on how you could potentially, or certainly how I use the Microsoft artificial intelligence tools that I have available to me on a daily basis. Maybe what I can do is I can steal a little bit of time from the ethics and safety lesson, and I can show you a little bit more about how I would use some of the AI tools that are available, at least to me. I'm sure that it's going to be quite exciting. All right, so enough stalling, and I think the important thing is just to get to some doing. So if you don't mind, I'm going to pop that up into full screen mode. Like I think that should do the trick. And let's get it. So the question that I have up there, and the question that my wife really asked me, is so what? You know, we've all heard of this thing called artificial intelligence, but you know, what exactly is it? You know, maybe we don't even know what artificial intelligence is supposed to do for us. So the simplest explanation that I could come up with artificial intelligence is exactly contained in the words artificial intelligence. Artificial meaning being able to mimic, and the intelligence part thereof being able to mimic the intelligence and the capabilities of a human being. But the capabilities of a human being to perform tasks, right? And not only perform tasks, you have to remember that human beings have this need to perpetually improve in the performance of those tasks. And that is exactly what artificial intelligence is. Now, there are many examples of artificial intelligence, to be fair, that you are probably interacting with on a daily basis. And my wife was quite surprised to learn that she is indeed interacting with AI on a daily basis. You know, the first thing that sprung to mind for me was something like virtual assistants, and then streaming services and social media, and other smart home devices. These are actually all examples of artificial intelligence. So I thought, you know, why don't we spend a little bit of time looking at how we interact with artificial intelligence on a day-to-day basis, and then maybe we can do a little bit of a look at, you know, the different types of artificial intelligence, and categorize artificial intelligence in some broad terms. That's probably where we'll end up. And maybe with some of those broad terms of artificial intelligence, we'll spend a little bit more time looking at some of the things like perhaps we'll look at big data. Maybe we can have a quick look at something called machine learning. Maybe we'll spend a little bit of time talking about deep learning, natural language processing. And maybe we can also just have a quick look at generative AI, and perhaps I can do a quick demo of how I would perhaps use generative AI in a situation like today. Right. So where to start? Well, the first one is examples of artificial intelligence that you're probably already interacting with. And the first one, of course, is the famous virtual assistant. It's actually one of the most popular applications of artificial intelligence. We're looking at things like Alexa and the Google Assistant, Siri. Perhaps we're looking at something like Bixby. And what they effectively are intelligent helpers that are integrated into things like your phones. Perhaps you have an autonomous home, so it might be integrated in your home. They just to me seems to make my life a lot more convenient, and allow me to be much more connected to my environment and the things around me. So, you know, why are they examples of artificial intelligence? Because when we interact with them, we're actually providing them with an opportunity to learn more about us, more about our voice, more about our accents, more about our preferences. And this continuous learning process allows them to offer a more personalized and a more human-like interaction. Whether it's things like, setting reminders, or whether it's things like being able to play our favorite songs, or being able to control some of the other home devices that we may have available, right? So artificial intelligence can actually quite seamlessly integrate into our daily lives without us knowing it, enhancing our overall experience. The next form, and I must admit that I'm a sucker for these gadgets. The next form of artificial intelligence is a smart vacuum. Let's think of it as being a robot. So let's call it a smart robotic vacuum. They're becoming quite popular. For example, I have two of these smart robots in my home. My family, we are crazy about dogs, so we have 4 pit bull terriers. And of course, the kids tend to let the pit bull terriers into the house. They run everywhere. They shed hair everywhere. Gone are the days of me walking around with a broom and a mop, or a vacuum cleaner, which I continuously trip over to. I have 2 of these smart vacuum cleaners that roam the home. And what they do is they clean, and they're even smart in to the extent where I can set a schedule for when I want them to clean, where I want where I want them to clean, how much cleaning I want them to be able to do. And they have the ability to navigate the different floor types that I have in my home. So in my lounge, for example, I have tiles. In the bedrooms, I have carpets, and they're smart enough to be able to navigate that environment. So they certainly assist me on a day-to-day basis to keep my home clean. I can therefore sit on the couch and relax most of the day, while this smart vacuum cleaner does all of the hard work for me. So my wife was quite surprised when I told her that these are examples of artificial intelligence. They have the ability to unstuck themselves from corners. They have the ability to park themselves and charge their own battery. And while we were having this conversation, perhaps this is something that you can explore on the side. My wife was saying, well, Trevor, it seems to me to make a lot of sense that we have a smart creepy crawly, because I unfortunately live in a house that has a swimming pool. I say unfortunately because everybody dreams of having a swimming pool until such time as you actually have to clean the thing. Your creepy crawly always gets stuck on the step, never reaches a specific area in the pool. It kind of makes sense to me to translate. This is a great opportunity for business. It seems to me to translate the utilization of a smart vacuum cleaner into a smart creepy crawly. If we could do that, perhaps, well, there's a great opportunity to drive some business in your organization. Of course, another typical example of artificial intelligence is what we would have in a smart driving car. Most people think that smart driving cars are relatively new, but I think if I remember correctly, the first smart driving car, well, perhaps it wasn't a car, but the first smart driving bot that I'm aware of was developed early in the 1950s. It was actually a mouse that could navigate a maze. And what is a car other than a large mouse containing people navigating a maze of roads? Of course, with smart driving cars have access to huge amounts of data. And I think something that we'll probably find as we progress is that artificial intelligence is pretty useless unless we have large volumes of data that we can feed the artificial intelligence system and help train it to make better decisions in the future. So self-driving cars have access to these huge volumes of data, and by leveraging these huge volumes of data, instead of just getting you safely from point A to point B without you having to interact with the navigation system, it has the ability to analyze traffic camera data, data from applications like Google Maps and Waze, plan your route and react instinctively to changes in traffic conditions. So that's yet another example of artificial intelligence, probably already in our daily lives. If you don't have a smart driving vehicle, which I don't, I must say that I use things like Google Maps and Waze extensively to assist me in navigation. And they collect data from a variety of different sources, analyze traffic patterns, change routes according to current data, so that I can get to where I need to be in the most effective and efficient manner. Another interesting application of artificial intelligence, we don't all have smart driving vehicles, and we certainly don't all have these little robotic systems that act as vacuum cleaners in our houses, but many of us use streaming services. So as an example of perhaps a streaming service and how artificial intelligence is used in a streaming service, imagine for a moment that you are a football fan, right? So you enjoy watching football, but if your life is anything like my life, I hardly have time to think. Never mind sit down and relax and watch a football match, where I would like to see the highlights of a football match that maybe took place yesterday. Now imagine the amount of time and effort that goes in to creating a 10 or 15-minute highlight reel. Match is what, 90 minutes long, maybe a little bit longer with extra time. So we're watching the football match. There's a team of 20 of us. We're watching the football match and we're taking out what we believe are highlights and we're combining this into a highlight reel. I mean, the amount of time and effort is just unimaginable. So what is happening, and this certainly has happened already in 2018 at Wimbledon. They have an artificial intelligence service, and what the artificial intelligence service does is it looks at the recorded match, or whether it's tennis or football, and based on the response from the crowd and the response from the players and the response from the umpires or officials, it goes ahead and creates the highlight reel for us. We can take this perhaps a step further, and we can think about things like Netflix and perhaps even something like Amazon Prime, where you are based on the programs that you have watched before, they will generate a list of recommendations, and that list of recommendations is going to be very closely aligned with the programs that you've watched before and your reaction to the programs that you have watched before. So things like streaming services are directly affected by artificial intelligence. AI in the modern world, of course, AI is it provides us with an opportunity to compose music, to produce your own music. I would have loved to be a music composer, but that's one of the things that unfortunately I have no talent in that particular area. But through leveraging artificial intelligence, what I could potentially do is I can have the artificial intelligence compose the music, and I can focus on the vision, on what it is I want to achieve. So those are just some examples of artificial intelligence. Now, having said that, I guess what we're going to have to do at some point in time is have an official definition of AI. And I happen to have that official definition of AI on one of my slides. I hope it's the next one. Yes, I tend not to hope. I tend to have a plan, and I tend to execute against that plan. So there's a quick definition of artificial intelligence. So you'll notice that that definition encompasses some of the examples that I've discussed before, perhaps such as the football match, and to generate a highlight reel. It will include things like probably Netflix and the Amazon Prime, the personalization of the viewer experience. So those are a couple of things just to start us off with artificial intelligence. Now, the way that my brain works, to be fair, is my brain works by categorizing things. So what I thought of doing is I thought of going ahead and categorizing artificial intelligence in a number of different categories. We can, of course, categorize in whichever categories we desire. But as I was talking to my wife and as she was starting to understand that her life is already impacted by artificial intelligence, even though she just didn't know it, she was starting to translate, okay, so there's a great opportunity to take a AI-driven vacuum cleaner and turn that into a business opportunity for the creation of an AI-driven creepy crawly, as an example. I don't think creepy crawly actually has. Maybe I should sell that idea to them. And then she started asking questions about the different types of AI and what the different types of AI would be able to do for her and her organization. So I thought, let's create these broad categories of artificial intelligence. It doesn't stop with my categorization, of course. AI has a tremendous applicability and huge capability in every single industry that I can think of. So if you prefer to categorize it differently, of course, you're more than welcome to categorize it differently. But what I decided to do is well, my initial feeling was that I wanted to categorize it by technology and then based on functionality. But it turns out that my wife isn't that strong with technology. So I thought maybe of replacing the technology with something more appropriate for her. And the first thing that I did is I replaced the idea of technology with capability. Right. So I think there are probably 3 different artificial intelligence types that are classified under capability. And it might be important for us just to look at them quickly and get a brief understanding of what those different types of AI are. And a little bit later, I'll show you how those different types of artificial intelligence is built into a toolbox that we can use in our day-to-day lives. So the first type of artificial intelligence that I would categorize according to capability is something called ANNI, right? ANNI being an acronym for artificial narrow intelligence. It's sometimes also referred to as weak AI. And surprisingly enough, in this category, based on capability, weak AI is the only type of AI that I could find that I could then categorize by capability. There are other types of AI which I will show you is also categorized in capability, but I believe that they are more associated with the future rather than the present. It's called artificial narrow intelligence for a reason, because artificial narrow intelligence is really good at performing a specific task. The unfortunate thing, of course, is that ANNI cannot operate outside of that defined task. So it focuses on a specific subset of abilities and works exceptionally well in that subset. So examples of narrow AI would include things like Siri, Alexa, even something like IBM Watson. I would say that probably included in narrow AI would also be IBM's Deep Blue. Perhaps you've heard of IBM's Deep Blue. It was the first artificial intelligence system that could beat a chess grandmaster by beating Garry Kasparov. And even way back, we're talking about let's say the very, very early 90s. In the very early 90s, I had a Garry Kasparov chess computer. And I played chess against this computer every free moment that I had, trying to improve my chess. And it was able to beat me relatively easily. But even back then, this was just an example of narrow AI focusing on playing chess. That chess computer of Garry Kasparov, it, for example, wouldn't be able to play checkers or Snakes and Ladders, even though Snakes and Ladders is probably a much easier game to play. It could only focus on its single task. The challenge with narrow artificial intelligence is not necessarily that it can only focus on a single task, but the challenge is really that they lack consciousness. Okay, they lack understanding, and they can't apply their knowledge in different contexts. And I think that's really the challenge of narrow AI. So, my wife understands that the vacuum that we have in our home, that is a perfect example of narrow artificial intelligence. It has that single task that it can perform, but it performs that single task particularly well. Then the second type of artificial intelligence, and please, just if you don't mind. I'm very confident that you've probably heard of these types of artificial intelligence before. So the reason I have them, and the reason I want to talk about them, is just to clarify what they actually mean. So often we encounter these definitions, we read the definition, we think we know what they mean, but often it just takes the perspective of somebody else to open our eyes a little bit. So the next one we have over there is general artificial intelligence, or some people like to call it AGI as an example. Currently, this is what we would consider to be a theoretical form of artificial intelligence. And the idea behind general artificial intelligence is that it can perform tasks as human beings can do. Right. Remember, narrow artificial intelligence was designed to perform a specific task. AGI will possess the ability to understand, learn, and apply knowledge, but not in a specific task, okay, in a variety of different domains. So the idea is that AGI will ultimately be able to emulate human intelligence, and not only human intelligence, but also human behavior. And this will allow it to solve very complex problems. It will allow it to adapt to new situations that perhaps it's never encountered before, to be able to perform a wide range of different tasks and be as proficient in performing of those tasks as human beings are. Now, this has some implications in a variety of different fields. So good examples of the application that artificial general intelligence may have is in the healthcare system. It has the potential of diagnosing diseases with a very high degree of accuracy, personalizing things like treatment plans on an individual basis based on data that was collected from an individual patient. It will have the ability to conduct complex surgeries. No longer would we need an actual human being performing the surgeries if general artificial intelligence is developed accordingly. It will be able to perform those surgeries. Of course, we can take this into another domain as well, or another area as well. We can take this into education. AGI could provide with personalized learning experiences, not learning plans, but personalized learning experiences. I work at an education provider. We do amazing work in South Africa, but I work at an education provider. And one of the things that we in education know is that everybody learns differently. Yet we expect everybody to attend the same kind of training course, and everybody to derive benefit from the same type of training course. And that's not, how are we embracing diversity if everybody is treated the same way? And that's where artificial intelligence perhaps can play a very crucial role by customizing the experience of the student, ensuring that students receive tutoring on a variety of subjects in the way that is best suited to their individual needs rather than the group as a collective. Adapting teaching methods to suit individual learning styles. It could even help me as an educator develop more effective curricula and education tools. And that's the idea behind general artificial intelligence. I can go on into 3 or 4 different domains, but I think I trust that you get the idea of the power that is waiting to be unleashed with artificial general intelligence. And then we get to what what I always consider the scary one. So the scary one, of course, is still only theoretical, pretty much like general AI. Although we've made huge strides in the development of general AI, but super artificial intelligence or super AI is what we would call this, or ASI if you like, abbreviations. The idea here is that it will surpass human intelligence, right? Surpass human intelligence in all aspects, including things like creativity, problem solving, and even emotional intelligence, right? Yes, I know it is still a theoretical concept, but the potential for applications is vast. Is vast. Um, so yeah, I think that ultimately, when we look at super intelligence, the idea is to be able to not equal but surpass um, the human's ability to think, right? Not only to think, but also to experience, right? So I say this is the scary one. And maybe what we'll do, not maybe, what we will do a little bit later, there will be a module or a lesson about ethics and safety. And without putting in place the appropriate guardrails, it's very easy to envision um, a Skylab type of scenario where super artificial intelligence um, ultimately destroys humanity, right? And that's why ethics and safety is so crucial when it comes to the application of artificial intelligence. Right. So now we get to things that I think perhaps you would have encountered more, or perhaps you would have encountered, it's more likely that you would have encountered this. So I have a second classification of AI. And I said that this classification would be based on functionality. So for me, the idea behind the functionality is probably best illustrated with reactive machines. Reactive machines very closely aligned, I think, to narrow AI. It's the basic form of artificial intelligence. Um, Reactive machines, they base their predictions, they base their decisions on current information only. Therefore, they don't have the capability or the capacity to save results. So they cannot learn from experience. A very good example, perhaps I used this example a little bit too early, but a very good example of this is IBM's Deep Blue. Um, IBM's Deep Blue, it operated by recognizing the pieces on the chessboard now and responding according to moves that were made now. Always thinking about what was the best move to make to counter the move that was made now. It didn't refer to any of its previous experiences. So me, for example, and I'm sure if you're a chess player, you know that most chess players have a specific style. The Deep Blue system did not learn anything about Garry Kasparov's style as they were playing multiple chess matches. It could only respond to moves that were made by Garry Kasparov at that point in time. I guess I know a little bit more about the history of AI. So another example of reactive machines is something called Shaky the robot. Believe it or not, there was a robotic system developed. I think it was probably between like 1966 and 1972. And Shaky was equipped with sensors and a camera. and then let loose in a variety of different environments and asked to navigate these different environments, asked to find a route to safely navigate from point A to point B. Right. And Shaky was able to do this, but Shaky never retained any of the lessons that it learned. So if you put Shaky in the same maze as you did before, it would take exactly the same amount of time to navigate the maze because didn't have the capability to retain anything that it had learned before. Remember, artificial intelligence, at its very core, is there to mimic human behavior. Right? Mimic human behavior. And one of the things that humans do quite well is remember, right? And that brings me to the next type of artificial intelligence, perhaps also based on functionality. And this we would refer to as limited memory. So this was quite a tremendous advancement beyond what reactive machines could do. So we could learn from our past experiences, and we could ultimately use this information, all this information that we've learned, to make decisions. All right. So imagine Shaky for a moment. This time we place Shaky in the maze. He hasn't been able to navigate the maze before. Shaky now navigates the maze, memorizes the layout of the maze. Next time we put Shaky in the maze, he's able to recognize that the maze is similar to a maze that he navigated before, and is able to cut the amount of time that it takes to navigate that maze by a huge amount. So these systems can learn from past experiences, and they can use this information to make better decisions in the future, or more informed decisions in the future. Right? So they're completely different. Well, they are different from reactive machines, because if you remember, reactive machines only respond to its current input. So a good example of something with limited memory is actually Netflix's recommendation engine. Right? It uses limited memory. So what it does, it uses AI to analyze your viewing history. Okay, and suggest which content you might likely enjoy, but it doesn't maintain that in a database for an extended period of time. So if you don't watch Netflix for an extended period of time, the next time you log on to Netflix, you will find that the recommendations are not aligned with anything that perhaps you've watched in the past. Right. So that's maybe a good example thereof. Other examples of limited memory AI tools would be things like ChatGPT, Bard, maybe Gemini. I think, yeah, Gemini, Bard, slash Deep AI. They all use limited memory capabilities. So the trick with that, of course, is that they only retain their memory for a short period of time. The next type of artificial intelligence, which I'm confident you've heard of before, is the idea of theory of mind. So both reactive machines and limited memory machines, they do exist. Theory of mind is still, think of it as being an unrealized form of artificial intelligence. The idea here is that we will have an AI system that understands thoughts and emotions of other entities. So we might have an AI system that could analyze your emotion or your emotional state and respond to your emotional state appropriately. So imagine for a moment you got home in the afternoon, and it was a long, frustrating and tiring day, and you have a home assistant like a Siri or an Alexa that could read your mood by looking at your body language, your facial expression, the way that you carry yourself, the things that you do, and based on that, present you with a playlist of soothing music. That's a practical example of why theory of mind might be something that is not currently capable. Not currently capable. Okay, AI is not currently capable thereof. A good example thereof is something called Emotion AI. It's currently in development, and researchers hope that it will have the ability to not only analyze your voice and images and other kinds of data, but that it can respond appropriately to humans on an emotional level. Right. There is a good example of this. I'm maybe running ahead of myself here, but there's a relatively good example of this, or an attempt at this. It was called Sophia. Okay. Sophia is a very lightweight implementation of theory of mind. Sophia is a robot. It has cameras in Sophia's eyes. And then based on a collection of computer algorithms, it allows Sophia to see. It allows Sophia to make eye contact and not only make eye contact, but also sustain eye contact. Sophia has the ability to recognize individuals. Sophia has the ability to follow faces. But as yet, Sophia does not have the ability to recognize emotion or respond emotionally to emotions that he, she, or it was able to recognize. Okay. Some of the applications, I think, of theory of mind. The first thing that springs to the fore would be here's a really good example thereof. So a very good friend of mine, he works at a very large Microsoft partner, and what they do is they implement robotics and process automation systems. So he always says that robotics, process automation, and artificial intelligence systems. So he always says to me that the robotics side of artificial intelligence is the arms and the legs. And the artificial intelligence side thereof is the brain. So AI is the brain, and the robotic side thereof is the response to what the brain is able to understand. So the reason I mention that is I can't mention companies, but there's a large cash in transit company in South Africa. So cash in transit, meaning that they move vast volumes of money from point A to point B. And when these vast volumes of money get to point B, this is where the money is counted and tallied. And one of the challenges they have is, of course, one of the challenges we'll always have is that people are quite ingenious. So they have shortfalls when they count the money because people have the habit of being able to steal money. So what they're doing at the moment, it's not quite there yet, but they're developing, they're partnering with Microsoft and developing a solution that is able to recognize not only suspicious movement, because that already exists, but to be able to recognize stress levels in your voice, recognize the words that you choose, the tone of the voice, the way that you carry yourself, your body language, and translate those emotions, because at the end of the day, they are just representative of the emotions that you feel, and using that to be able to identify theft. All right, and then the final one that we have over here is the idea of self-aware AI. All right, so this is probably what we would consider to be the pinnacle of AI development. This is where machines are not only capable of recognizing emotion, right, but also machines that are able to possess their own consciousness, their own self-awareness, and to act accordingly. So they will be able to understand and replicate human-like intelligence. So, I mean, it goes beyond being able to process data, and it goes way beyond being able to perform tasks. The idea is that it actually understands itself. So unlike traditional AI, which is typically designed to be able to perform and execute specific commands based on some type of rule set that we've programmed into it, self-aware AI has the potential to recognize its own existence, its own thoughts, its own experiences. Right. Obviously we're not there yet. Hence the idea that it's still hypothetical. But if you just sit and you think about the capabilities that this might bring, no, some of the capabilities that this might bring would be being able to understand very complex emotions and what motivates people, leading to much more personalized solutions, way beyond what we are able to do today. So when it comes to enhancing decision making, the AI system would be able to enhance the decisions that it's made based on its experience, its human emotions, and the experience thereof. Okay. So that brings me to the end of that little lesson. I say it's a little lesson because, believe it or not, the 10 or odd slides that I have for that little lesson, honestly, I can talk about that for an extended period of time. I see that I still have a few minutes left, so I thought it might be nice for us to look at some practical examples of artificial intelligence. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to just briefly mention, allow me just to do that quickly. Artificial intelligence is a overarching concept, but within this overarching concept, we have a number of major branches. So when we talk about specific types of artificial intelligence, we think of them as being a subset of artificial intelligence or a branch of artificial intelligence. And one of them, of course, is something that we refer to as machine learning. Right. So the question then is, what is machine learning? So I have a really good example of what machine learning is. I think I have a really good example of what machine learning is. So I don't have the time to show you all the work that I've done regarding this, but there are a couple of things that I'd like to just quickly show you. There are lots of ways to implement machine learning, and one of them is in a supervised way. All right. So supervised learning is probably one of the most popular ways to introduce people to machine learning. It's easy to understand and it's relatively simple to implement. So effectively, what we're going to do is we're going to have examples with labels. All right. So what is a label? A label is how we would identify something to our machine learning algorithm. So we're going to give it data in the form of examples with labels. And we're going to feed this into a learning algorithm, right? And these example label pairs are then going to be used to identify the data and make a prediction as to whether something is an apple or not. So at the bottom over here, we call it supervised learning for a reason, because without the labels and without our supervision, we are not going to be able to categorize and classify the data. So what ends up happening is we take these labels and what we refer to as our training data, that's the data you see at the top over there, and this is then fed into our model. And this is where our model is ultimately trained. What do we mean with our model is ultimately trained? This is where the model tries to learn what makes a banana based on the labeled data that we fed it. You know, it's the shape, it's the color, it's the perhaps the orientation. That is what makes a banana a banana. So that's what we're trying to train our model to do, right? And that gives us our machine learning model. So once we've trained our machine learning, our data, we've trained our model, we've trained our algorithm, we now have a model, and then we can feed it test data. And what will happen is it will try to make a prediction as to whether what we are fed it was a banana or not, based on the trained model that we have. All right. So I did just want to mention that quickly. And then something else that I also want to mention is the idea of deep learning, right? So all branches of AI would be categorized as AI, of course, anything that tries to simulate human behavior. But deep learning goes a little bit further than machine learning. Deep learning is actually a subcategorization of machine learning, to be fair. And the idea with deep learning is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to simulate how a human brain works, right? So here's the example. So instead of labeling our data, what we're going to do is we're going to feed our machine learning algorithm vast volumes of data. And we're going to expect our machine learning algorithm to be able to extract features from that data. So the way that I always think about a feature is I think of a feature as being an attribute. You know, something like color might be an attribute, or shape might be an attribute. So we're going to feed our machine learning algorithm this amount of data, okay? And it's going to be extracting the features itself instead of me having to tell it a banana looks like this or a banana looks like that by labeling the data. Okay. And then the machine learning algorithm will classify it. So in future, if we feed it data, what we will end up with, just remember, that's the idea of machine learning. Deep learning, the feature extraction and classification is done automatically. We're not feeding it any labeled data, right? So with machine learning, where you see the feature extraction, this is where I allocate the attributes. And here with deep learning, you can see that the algorithms have a unique ability to learn high-level features directly from the data without requiring an expert to tell it what the features actually are. And that's what sets deep learning apart from machine learning. If you are interested, maybe a little bit after our discussion, I can show you how a neural network works and how we can use deep learning to learn how to recognize anything, images, videos, but we have to start small. So perhaps we can look at how machine learning could be used to recognize characters, alphabetical characters, or maybe even numerical values by looking at how a neural network works. We're quite limited in our time, and I really don't have time to go into that detail, at least not now. All right, and that brings us to the end of our first. What shall we say? Shall we say that was a good 40 minutes together, maybe 45 minutes together? The intent here was to define artificial intelligence. The intent here was to get to grips with some common terms and definitions that perhaps you would have encountered before. Not read the definition to you, but try to give you my perspective of that definition. We looked at the classification of artificial intelligence into two different types. Initially, I thought of doing it based on technology, but like I say, my wife's not that great with technology, so I went based on functionality, perhaps, and based on capability. We would have been exposed to things like artificial narrow intelligence, general intelligence, super intelligence, and then when we started looking at the functionality side thereof, we would have looked at things like being able to perform individual tasks in a single domain versus being able to perform tasks across multiple different domains. Right. And that was our first few minutes together. I see that what I need to do now is I need to talk a little bit about the history of AI. If there's one thing that's certain, sorry, I'm not quite keeping my eye on the chat. So I will try to identify chat messages when they appear. But unfortunately, I have many things happening at the same time. Okay, so I think if there's one thing that's constant, and that thing that's constant is change, right? And change is no more clear than if we look at the advancement in computer technology, right? And things that feel quite recent for us as human beings is actually ancient in terms of the advancement of technology. If you think about, something that's not too far in the past, at least for some of us, if you think about mobile phones in the 90s, mobile phones in the 90s were massive bricks with tiny little green displays. Um, and 2 decades before that, the main storage for computers were punch cards, if you can believe that. Right. So, in a very short period of time, computers evolved so quickly and became such an integral part of our daily lives, that it's easy to forget how recent technology actually is. So, what I did is I went ahead and I created a little, shall we call it a little timeline, and that little timeline is going to depict what, for me, maybe not for everybody, but for me, some of the critical and crucial points in time, when it came to the development of artificial intelligence. Right. And I'm very confident that a lot of people would probably look at this, and they would have highlighted other points in time. And of course, they're free to do so. But I decided that these were the important points in time for me and therefore for you. And for me, AI began in the 1950s. Okay. Really, really began in the 1950s. I know if you go do a search for the history of AI, you're going to find many timelines that refer back to probably um, 400 BC. I'm not concerned about that. That doesn't have a direct impact on me. Things that have a direct impact on me, the beginning of AI, which I would say was the 1950s. Okay. Back in the 1950s, computers were basically just calculators. Okay. Um, as a matter of fact, when an organization like NASA needed the answer to a specific calculation, like maybe they wanted to calculate the trajectory of a rocket launch, they more regularly asked a human being to do it. Right. Okay, so they thought of human beings as being human computers, or maybe even before that, they would have turned to teams of women who were then tasked to solve these complex calculations. A very good example of this, and a very practical example was breaking the Enigma code during the Second World War. The Germans had devised a method of encoding messages that the Allied nations were unable to crack. Right. And if you've ever watched any historical documentaries, history is one of the things that I enjoy. You would often see these rooms full of people sitting and trying to decipher these encoded messages. Okay. So long before computing machines became modern devices that everybody had access to, um, a mathematician and a computer scientist envisioned the possibility of having something called artificial intelligence. And this was the beginning of AI. And that mathematician, maybe you could guess, but that mathematician was somebody called Alan Turing. Okay. So this was way back when computing was still very heavily dependent on human brains. Alan Turing imagined a machine capable of advancing beyond its programming. Okay, this wasn't a practical. It wasn't a practical solution, but he envisioned something that would be able to do that in the future. Right. So Alan Turing is really credited with conceptualizing artificial intelligence before it ever became what it is today. Right. He also developed, strangely enough, and this is maybe something that you've heard about, he also developed something called the Turing test. Right. And effectively, what the Turing test means is for us at least, it allows us to assess whether a machine thinks on par with a human being. Right? That was the Turing test. How did it work? Um, you would have three participants in the Turing test. Right? Remember, back in the day, we're now talking the 1950s, this would have been text-based, right? So we would have typed our question and we would have received a response. So there would be three participants in the Turing test. The person asking the question, a human being capable of responding, and an AI system who would also be capable of responding. So if the person asking the question could not differentiate between the human response and the AI response, the idea was that now we had a self-aware artificial intelligence system. Now there are very many tests that we could apply for artificial intelligence, but the Turing test is the foundation thereof. Also in the 1950s, there was another event. I don't think I've mentioned it here, but it just kind of came to me now. There was another event that was quite important, and that was a mathematician. If I remember his name correctly, his name was John McCarthy. What he did is he invited a small group of people to participate in a workshop that ran over a 3 to 6 month period of time. Okay, and the goal of the workshop was to establish whether it was even possible to have thinking machines. Right. So that goes way back into the distant past, as far as I wanted to go into the distant past. Right. So for a long period of time, I would say this probably took place during the 1960s to 1970s. There was a lot of excitement that was created during that I think what was called the Dartmouth Conference. That was that 3 month period of time where some specialists all got together and tried to envision the possibility of having a machine that could actually think like a human being. So that really laid the foundation of what followed. So you'll probably find over the next couple of decades, there were advancements in the area of what we would call a chatbot. So we think that chatbots are relatively new. By the way, if we wanted to, we could quickly create a chatbot using artificial intelligence. Perhaps that's something that I can show you a bit later. But in the 1960 odds, the first chatbot that was created by MIT, was called Eliza. Right. So truly, Eliza is considered to be the first chatbot, and really it was intended to simulate therapy. Okay. By taking the answers that users gave it and using those to provide answers to other users. Right. So that was a very simple form of two-way communication, of a back and forth communication. Right. Very simple, of course. Right. But this is where the concept of a chatbot came from. Right. It was actually, I say very simple, but it turned out to be so effective that many of the participants in the experiment were not able to tell that Elizabeth was not a human being, right? And then something else that in this period of time as well, I think for me, the period of time would be 1966 to 1972. I think I mentioned this before. This is when we were introduced to something called Shaky the robot. Right. This was if I remember, it was at the Stanford Research Initiative. They developed a robot which was equipped with sensors, like a TV camera, right? And it was then used to navigate different types of environments / different types of mazes. Okay, and the objective behind creating Shaky the robot was to develop ideas into automation, right? So that we could have something that would be able to function independently, but in actual realistic environments, right? So Shakey's, as you can imagine, we're now talking we're now talking 1972, the year I was born, as a matter of fact. So Shakey's abilities were obviously very crude compared to what we can do with AI and robotics today, but it did have the ability to do visual analysis. It had the ability to do route finding, and it also had the ability to recognize objects, and store things in memory so that it could perform those tasks again in the future. So there's a little bit of a timeline for us already, and of course. During the 70s and 80s, there was a tremendous amount of upheaval in the world. Um, Particularly, I think you probably find that the Cold War between the East and the West was the thing that um, dominated our attention. So during that 1960s and 1980s period of time, there was actually very little development as far as AI is concerned. And to be fair, this actually really became known as the AI winter. So you'll find not too much being done in AI development in the 80s, but that ultimately led to massive developments in the, let's call it the late 80s and through the late 80s and the 90s. Right. As a matter of fact, the first driverless car was developed in 1986, right, and was developed in Germany, as a matter of fact. Um, Believe it or not, as you would expect, I guess, it was a Mercedes. It was a panel van, a Mercedes panel van. It was outfitted with a computer system, and it had sensors that could read the environment. Um, so that was the rudimentary first development of a driverless car. Of course, it could only drive on roads without other cars, and wasn't able to carry passengers. But that was one of the huge advancements that was made in that 90s period of time, late 80s and 90s. And then, of course, the thing that blew away everybody's mind at the time, certainly it did mine. Um, in 1996, I was 4 years out of the military, and this is where IBM introduced this computer system called Deep Blue. Um, Deep Blue was a perfect example of narrow AI. It was a computer program that could play chess. Okay, and it could play chess against a grandmaster. And at that time, Garry Kasparov was the foremost chess player in the world. It played him in a six-game matchup. Okay, and at the time, Deep Blue only won one of the six games, believe it or not. But the following year, 1997, um, it won the rematch. In fact, in fact, it took only 19 moves to win the final game against a chess grandmaster. Now, I don't know if you know anything about chess, but I think a grandmaster's rating is over 2,400. My rating, and I win a fair percentage of my games. My rating is only 1,200, right? So from a computer system that was able to win one out of six matches the year before, it was able to win and beat Garry Kasparov in 19 matches. Okay. Now, obviously, Deep Blue didn't have the functionality of today's generative AI computer systems. Okay, but it could process information at a far faster rate than the human brain can. Okay, so for example, in 1 second, it could review 200 million potential chess moves, right? I can maybe review 5 chess moves in a second, right? It could review 200 million chess moves in a second. Amazing, and that really set the pace for the future. So I could have gone even further than 2022, but I wanted to leave this discussion for a little bit later because I wanted to talk about generative AI. So we'll talk about that from 2022 onwards. But now we're in 2016. Think of this as a 20-year period from 2000 to about 2019. So there are a couple of things that took place over here. The first social robot was developed. If I remember its name, it's got like an Indian name, Kismet. Kismet, I think it was. Sorry, I say an Indian name, but Kismet reminds me of an Indian program that I used to watch when I was a kid. And what could it do? It could simulate human emotion. It couldn't understand human emotion, but it could simulate human emotion. So that was one of the advancements that was made in that period of time. Also, at that time, Mars was orbiting quite close to Earth. And in 2000 and I think it was 2004, if I remember, NASA took advantage of this and they sent 2 rovers to Mars. Okay. Both were equipped with AI that helped them traverse Mars's terrain. If you've ever seen images of Mars, extremely inhospitable, very rocky terrain. And now all of a sudden we had 2 rovers on Mars using artificial intelligence, going all the way back to Shaky the robot, but of course much more advanced, that could then navigate that inhospitable environment. Something else that also happened during that period of time, I would think of note, would be IBM Watson. I think that goes back to about 2021, and then in 2011, I think. And then the major thing that happened for us, the major milestone in artificial intelligence, was Siri and Alexa. Okay. This actually happened during a presentation of the iPhone, Apple's iPhone product. They showcased a new feature, which was a virtual assistant. The virtual assistant happened to be called Siri. 3 years later, Amazon released its own proprietary virtual assistant named Alexa, and both had some amazing capabilities like natural language processing. And of course, the idea behind natural language processing is being able to understand and interpret human speech, and of course, being able to respond to human speech. That's a lot more difficult than it sounds. A lot more difficult than it sounds because every human has a different speech pattern, slightly different accent, uses words slightly differently. So imagine the kind of AI that would be able to recognize speech, recognize the language, and be able to respond appropriately. Okay. So it was an amazing advancement, but yeah, it was an amazing advancement, but it had some shortcomings. Of course, the shortcomings were based on the list of questions that it could respond to, right? It didn't quite have AI at the time, so there were only set questions that it could respond to. So even though it used natural language processing, if you asked it anything outside of its scope, we think of this as command and control systems. So if you ask it anything out of its scope, it did not have the ability to respond. And that was in 2011. And that, if you ask me, that wasn't that long ago. But of course, in computer terms, that might as well have been in the previous century. And then there was another advancement made, and this really kind of introduced us to the idea of generative AI, right? And I've mentioned generative AI before. I'm happy to do a little demo of generative AI for you a little bit later at the end of our discussion. Of course, because I am sponsored by Microsoft. It will be a Microsoft demonstration, but I think you'll appreciate it. All right. So generative AI in the form of DALL-E. Okay, so DALL-E could generate images. All right, so we could give DALL-E. This was an open AI initiative, by the way. It was released in 2021, and it was a text-to-image model. All right, so what we did is we gave it a description. Right, that description we call it a prompt. So we gave it a prompt. DALL-E, using natural language processing, would be able to read the text, okay, and respond by generating realistic images, and realistic and images that could be edited. All right. DALL-E used to be free in the distant past because it was included with OpenAI's GPT-3 model, but and it was literally trained on something like 12 billion different parameters. So being able to recognize 12 billion different parameters and then being able to generate the image. In 2022, ChatGPT was released. Okay, so it's OpenAI initiative. They released an AI chatbot called ChatGPT, and users were able to interact with ChatGPT and get a human realistic response. Right, and of course, today, who has not heard? If you just give me a second, I can probably do that for you. Today, oops. I've done something here that I didn't want to do, but never mind. Today, who has not heard of Copilot? Right. So I use Copilot extensively in my day-to-day life. A combination of natural language processing, machine learning, deep learning, and let's refer to it as a multimodal AI service. Multimodal meaning that it can do many different things. So it leverages natural language processing, machine learning, generative AI even, although generative AI is just another subset of machine learning and deep learning. But yeah, that's a quick look at the history of artificial intelligence. So I could have included many more things, but since about 2022, with 2021 maybe, with ChatGPT, OpenAI and ChatGPT and DALL-E becoming available, I think since then we've really seen a boom in what we would think of as generative AI. Right. So if you ask me what generative AI is, it's the ability to generate something based on a prompt. So we could generate text based on a prompt, or we could generate an image based on a prompt. We could probably do a simple version thereof very quickly. So let's just see if that's not, well, I guess I can use this. So we'll go over here quickly and we'll just ask Copilot, please, something that I used the other day, please create a photorealistic image of a bus coming down the road. All right. Now, Copilot is not necessarily at the moment the best at doing this, but it's a very quick demonstration of it. And I should get a number of images to choose from, and I should then be able to go ahead and narrow the prompt criteria down. And the reason I wanted to have a bus, perhaps that's not a good one. The reason I wanted to have a bus is the way that I always describe AI to people is AI is the bus. Okay, we see it's there, it's big, it's coming towards us, and you have two options. You can either jump on the bus and travel with it, or you can stay in place and the bus is going to ride right over you. That's how I describe AI to people in terms of running their business. And that brings us to the end of that little lesson. I am pretty comfortable with what we have done so far. If you are keen, I am keen, and I'm happy to continue. All right, I just need to organize my life quickly.
Trevor, sorry, before you do, there's a question that's been posed to you. If you could perhaps just take a minute to respond to that.
Yeah, I will do that. Apologies, I just need to find the question, I suppose. Sorry, I've just got my windows a bit moved around. Let me
Perhaps
see.
you can read out the question.
Yeah, I see it over here from Chepo, right? Very insightful. You mentioned your wife being not so tech savvy, how easy or difficult it is to acclimatize to AI tools, especially for older generations. What are the financial implications of AI in public service settings with the rise of nanotechnology and quantum computing? Okay, so my wife is by far not technical at all, but she uses artificial intelligence every day without actually knowing that she uses artificial intelligence. And now I'm not even referring to things like the navigation system. I'm not even thinking about things like our smart vacuum cleaner. Let me give you an illustration of how my wife uses generative AI on a day-to-day basis. Sorry, I'm sharing the wrong thing for you over there. But let me show you something quite amazing. Okay. So I was asked to put together a presentation for let's think of the presentation quickly. Ethics. Okay, AI and ethics. It's one of the lessons that we have to cover. And what I was asked to do is put together a presentation. Now, unlike most people, I'm a lazy kind of guy. So if I don't have to work, I won't work. And I specifically don't like working hard. I'm a firm believer in working smart. So what I did is I went ahead and if I can just show you, I went ahead and I did a little bit of research and I put together a paper on ethics in AI. So this is a paper that I've made available to my colleagues. Unfortunately, it is an internal paper, but it looks something like that, right? And you can read a little bit about ethics in AI, or at least my perspective of ethics in AI. It's about 7 pages long, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an artificial intelligence tool, Microsoft Copilot, and I'm going to use its generative AI capabilities to translate text to text and images. So I'm going to use Copilot's multimodal functionality to take text and turn it into other text, but also take the text and turn it into images, right? Now remember, my wife not being the most tech-savvy person on planet Earth, but my wife doesn't really need to know much about tech to be able to do this. This is the beauty of an AI tool. The beauty of an AI tool is that it hides the complexity of the AI function behind the interface. So many people think that Copilot is just ChatGPT or GPT-4, but it's much more than just ChatGPT-4. Let me show you what it's going to look like. So as a matter of fact, I'm not even going to use Copilot to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Microsoft PowerPoint to create our next lesson for us. All right. So forget about the fact that I already have a presentation. I'll ignore that presentation completely. And based on that ethics in AI paper that I created, I'm going to try my level best to create a presentation that we'll actually use in class for AI ethics. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, let's go and create a new blank presentation. And of course, I have Copilot. So the cost of Copilot for us, I think, is $30 per user. So my wife's company, so they're quite a large company, so they employ about 13,000 people. And of course, they don't give Copilot to all 13,000 people. It's cost prohibitive. Costs are going to be coming down, of course, because as people adopt technology, more investment is made in that technology and costs come down naturally. But in my wife's company, the senior executives and mid-tier management all have access to Copilot. I'm mid-tier management, so I have access to Copilot. And what I want to do is I want Copilot to create a presentation for me. All right. Not difficult, easy enough to use. All right. And what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to add a reference file. And there I have AI ethics challenges, importance, and the future of AI ethics. Right. And, that's not good enough. I mean, giving it just a presentation is not good enough. So I'm going to ask it to do something for me. Now, the way that I think of these types of AI tools is I think of them as being my friends. So when I engage with my friends, I am generally speaking friendly and I am polite. So I see no reason why I can't be polite and generally friendly when I interact with these AI tools. So I'm going to say, please go ahead and create a presentation using the following attached document as the basis thereof. Right. Now, usually it makes a little bit more sense to provide it with some context. So I'm going to provide it with a little bit of context. And my context is going to be, I am the presenter at a Microsoft AI event, right? There's my context. And please go ahead and create a presentation using the following attached document as the basis thereof. Focus on ethics and safety. What do you think about that? All right. So here's a great practical example. Now my wife is she's a financial director, right? And as a financial director, she has access to vast volumes of information. She has Excel spreadsheets upon Excel spreadsheets, upon SQL databases, upon other relational databases. And very often it's very difficult for her to get an overarching view of all the different data that is available to her. She doesn't have that technical know-how. She doesn't know how to use Power BI and how to transform data. And she doesn't know those things, but she knows what she wants. And in many circumstances, if you're able to express what you want, the AI tool will do the heavy lifting for you. Right. Now, normally, if I were to create a presentation like this, I think it would probably take me, I don't know. I'm not a PowerPoint wizard myself, so it will probably take me like a whole day to create a presentation like this. Let's actually see if this AI tool can do it for me, and let's see how long it takes the AI tool to do that. For me, Copilot is just the AI tool. There's a lot of AI happening in the background. Copilot is just my GUI interface into the actual AI that's taking place. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press. I want to have I want to time it. So if you'll just indulge me for a moment. I've got a timer over here, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, start the timer. There's the countdown. And then even with all my clicking around, let's do that. And let's just sit back. And then what I want to do, it's great. Let's generate the slides. Okay. Yeah. And in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my cup of tea, which is ice cold, and I'm going to have a sip of tea. Lovely. And then we'll scroll down a little bit. Okay, so there's a couple of slides that looks like it's being created. And remember what this is doing, it's looking at that attached document that I had. All right. And there's my PowerPoint slide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep it. And here is our next presentation. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this presentation in class live to talk about ethics and safety. Okay. And I know that it might not be exactly what I wanted, right? But what it has done is it's given me a layout of what it is I need. I do have some background in this, so of course, I did create a talk for it. So I'm happy to use their slides rather than use the slides that I'd created before. And let's see how accurate it was. And even though I've been talking nonsense now, it took us 2 minutes to do. That would usually be half a day's work, for me at least. That would be a half a day's work for me. So as to how accessible are AI tools, fundamental tools like what you see over here, Microsoft Copilot, is easily available and accessible to everybody. There's a free version thereof. I happen to have the paid version thereof. I'm lucky. My company saw the need for me to have it. I think it cost us maybe $30 per seat, per seat being per user, per month. I think it's like that. Now you say to yourself, Trevor, wow, that's expensive. We have 13,000 employees, so 13,000 multiplied by $30. I don't think that's the approach that you should be following. I think the approach that you should be following is identify who will benefit from it, all right? And remember, benefit is a scale of investment versus return. So if the investment is more than the return, then of course it's something that you're not going to do. But if the return is more than the investment, then clearly it is something that you should be doing. So it was a no-brainer for my company to give me access to Copilot like this, because this has made my life so much easier. All right. I can never be caught off guard anymore. I can never be caught off guard again. As long as I put in the grunt work up front, I can have Copilot do the heavy lifting for me. The heavy lifting is creating the slides, doing the research and creating papers and writing articles. That's part of my daily job. Okay. And yes, I will say something about Herbert. I will say something about AI governance, right? And I think this is going to be part of when we start maybe talking about ethics. And a little bit later, I have some ideas about how you would implement artificial intelligence in your business. Okay. Okay, there's a very interesting question from Herman. Okay, Herman Krier, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, else it would be Herman Kruger. Um, um, so it's such an interesting question that I have a definitive answer and a non-definitive answer. All right. So the answer is non-definitively, it depends. Okay. It depends on the model that you're using. So if you are using a publicly accessible model, then the answer is who knows what happens to the questions that you provide. If you're using a publicly accessible model, I'll show you a publicly accessible model over here quickly. We're just going to go there and we're going to go to Copilot. So, and then what I'm going to do is, I don't really want to, but I think I'll have to. Let me go there quickly and let me sign out. All right. And then I'll grab Copilot. So this is now publicly accessible Copilot. All right, publicly accessible Copilot. So if I type anything here, who knows what's going to happen to it? I'm not saying this with Microsoft Copilot. I'm using this as an example. If I insert a document over here, who knows what's going to happen with it? Because theoretically, I have been signed out. But if you are in your Microsoft tenant, or you're in your AWS tenant, or you are in your Google Cloud Platform tenant, everything that you put in there is private. Private to the extent where everything that is shared with you is private to you, and everything you share with anybody else is private to them. So the questions that you type in there are private to you. Right. But if you're using a freebie version of some type of artificial intelligence tool, then I'm afraid that it's probably not private. Okay. Can I add multiple documents in Copilot and create a presentation? Jane. Jane, the answer is File, New. All right. And then what we'll do is we'll create a presentation and we'll reference the file and we'll put in my AI ethics. Okay. There's the doc. All right. Include up to one reference in your description. All right. Currently. And then you'll notice there we'll go ahead and generate it. All right. So at the moment, no. But of course, you know, as a relatively, I was going to say as a relatively intelligent young man, but young is not the key word anymore. But there's absolutely nothing that prevents me from taking my generative AI document and copying and pasting its content into the same said document and then opening up Copilot to look at one document that I've combined. I'll combine them under different headings. And when I tell Copilot what it is I want it to do, I will tell it to focus on those two overarching headings. That's the degree of how amazing is that, right? So I think what it has done is it's made my life so much easier. Not only so much easier, but it has given me more time to do the things that are important in our business, right? Things like creating PowerPoint presentations are not important in our business, right? Our business is focused on uplifting the unemployed youth. Our business is focused on coming up with ideas that can help me uplift the unemployed youth in South Africa through training and education and creating these training programs in key areas where we need skills. That is what NetCampus does. NetCampus is not a creator of PowerPoint presentations. So if I can get the AI tool to do all of this grunt work for me, then I can focus on collaborating with my colleagues and coming up with these new and innovative ideas for enhancing the capabilities of our young people. That's what I want to do. All right. All of this stuff that you see over here, this is just so that I can accomplish that. And I have no problem using an AI service to be able to do that for me. Right. So I've tried my best to go through some of the questions. So Jane, the answer is no. Herman, the answer for you is it depends. It depends on the AI service that you're using and their privacy statement. Johnny, are there AI tools that can write a research? Okay, so this is a question that I get quite frequently. Yes, there are. Copilot is not necessarily the best of the AI tools to write this research paper for you. So let's say, for example, that you are doing, my daughter is at varsity, and she's doing her honors this year, and she has to do an experiment associated with um, mole rats and pain receptors in mole rats, and the difference between breeding pairs and non-breeding pairs of mole rats. Okay. So, what? I didn't have a clue, but I gave her an amazing research paper. There are many AI services that focus exclusively on gathering content and disseminating that content in the form of research papers. Many of them. So now we get to culture, ethics, and behavior. Many of them have the built-in capability to disguise the fact that they were created by artificial intelligence. So they can effectively fool AI into thinking that it was not created by AI. All right. We'll have to come back to governance about that, I guess. All right. So that's, I don't know if type answer, answer live, I have answered that one. Can use cases of Copilot as any use cases? I'll give you one of those now. Let me just close some of these questions that I think I have answered or deferred to a later stage. All right. So there's one more question. Any use cases of Copilot as an AI agent? Effectively, if you think about it, Vuyelwa, if you think about it, what you're seeing, if I go over here right now, what you're seeing on your screen over here, if we were to just go to Copilot, this is a AI agent. This is actually a large AI agent that you see over there. All right. So are there use cases of Copilot as an AI agent? Absolutely. And just to enhance on that, Microsoft has a technology which they refer to as Copilot Studio. You'll just have to excuse me quickly while I see if I have that shortcut somewhere. Blah, 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 blah. Studio code. Somewhere I might have Copilot Studio, but maybe not. What Copilot Studio allows me to do is build Copilots like Copilot. So you can use AI to build a Copilot like Copilot. I hope that kind of answers your question. All right. So where to now? Well, we said that I didn't want to use these. I don't want to sit and create these PowerPoint presentations just for the sake of creating a PowerPoint presentation. Oh, by the way, along with my PowerPoint presentation, what I'll do is I'll just show you. Where is PowerPoint now? Maybe if I just view it and we do normal slides, you'll see that it will have some text associated with the PowerPoint presentation as well. So some speaker notes, which I find to be particularly useful. What I don't want though is I don't want presenter view. I don't need that. But let's get to the next lesson on our program. If I can just have a quick look-see over here, and the next lesson on our program should take us until about past 30. And if you don't mind, when we get to past 30, what I will do is I'll spend a little bit of time showing you some of the other amazing functionality in Microsoft Copilot. I'm not going to do demos about silly things like complete an email for me, although I could probably do that if you like. But I want to show you some of the enhanced capabilities of Microsoft Copilot and the AI toolset. So what they want us to do now, and this is going to be two little presentations. The first one is they want us to talk a little bit about ethics and safety, and then they want me to talk about some maybe specifics. Maybe I can share one or two case studies with you, sketch a scenario and show you how that organization has implemented artificial intelligence to provide them with a business solution. Right. Where to begin? So Remember, I just created these right now. I have my own presentation, but I want to use these just because I created them right now. Understanding principles. So what I'm going to do quickly, there's the agenda. Looks like they have a quick introduction to ethics, key principles of AI ethics, ethical challenges in AI. Okay, I can work with that. I can work with that. So I guess they'll start off with an introduction to AI ethics. So let's face it, okay? Um, AI is a tool, right? AI is not self-aware. We don't have super artificial intelligence. AI is a tool, right? And that tool has been made available to people like us. And we should be leveraging that tool. But we pretty much have a choice in how we decide to leverage any type of tool that is given to us. I, for example, own a firearm, right? I've only ever used my firearm to protect myself once, and I've owned a firearm since 1991. All right. When I left the military, the first thing I did is I got a firearm. All right. I've only ever used it once to protect myself in 35 years, in 35 years. All right. A firearm to me is just a tool. Now, if I take that firearm and I go and give that firearm to somebody who's going to rob your house, are they going to use that firearm as responsibly as I am? Of course they're not. They're going to use that firearm in a way that they think is appropriate under their circumstances. And that is why ethics in AI is so important for us. Okay? AI ethics are effectively the guidelines that make sure that all of these smart machines that we have are going to be used in a responsible way. All right. Responsible firearm utilization is if my life is under threat and I have no other option, I can use my firearm. I don't take my firearm and go outside and shoot up into the air just because I have a firearm. All right. AI should be the same. All right. So we should have some type of guidelines that make sure that the machines that are built are used responsibly. Okay. It's just like any other powerful AI tool. AI needs to have clear instructions to avoid making unfair decisions, keeping secrets, okay, or becoming a confusing mystery that nobody ends up wanting to utilize. All right. So that's what AI ethics is there for. AI ethics help us ask important questions about how AI works so that it can assist us effectively and safely. Right. So if the question that follows is what is AI ethics, then I would say it's a field that should concern every one of us. Okay. It should highlight the ethical implications of developing and using AI systems. Remember, things like Microsoft Copilot and many other of these co-pilots, right? Gemini would be an example thereof as well. Many of them are there and available to us, but they might not do everything that we need them to do. So we have the ability to develop our own AI systems. We can create our own machine learning algorithms. We can create our own deep learning algorithms. We can train our own algorithms to give us the results that we expect, to give us the predictions that we want. Okay. So essentially what ethics is let's think of it as a set of guiding principles that ensure AI technology is created and deployed in a responsible manner. Okay. Why is it even important? Why is it even important? Well, frankly, frankly, AI is important because of bias, avoiding bias. Okay, AI systems that are trained on biased data can perpetuate discrimination. That's a fact. Okay, AI ethics focuses on mitigating bias in AI development and ensure that we have fair and just outcomes. Right. So I did an AI talk for Microsoft, kind of similar to what we're doing now. And afterwards, one of the young ladies came to me, and she asked me a question about. I can't exactly remember the question, but I can remember some key words from her question. And some of the key words from her question had to do with Africanize AI. So I said to her, please, I don't know what you mean when you say Africanize AI. Tell me what you mean with Africanize AI. Um, and it turns out that what we really needed to do in terms of Africanizing AI is training the AI models with data from Africa, right? So why was it not trained with data from Africa? That is because perhaps whoever created it had a built-in bias. I don't mean bias in a negative fashion. They had a built-in bias because they were only ever exposed to data from Europe or from the USA and never thought to include data from Africa. All right. So responsible AI, okay, and in particular ethics in AI, is really all about ensuring that we avoid bias. Okay, and also responsible AI should talk about privacy protections. Okay, remember AI systems rely on vast amounts of data, and that vast amount of data, immediately what it has to do is raise privacy concerns. So AI ethics emphasizes responsible data collection and also how we responsibly use the data. Okay. Something else that I think is crucial in AI ethics, of course, is going to be transparency. And I don't even know if this word actually exists, but I refer to it as explainability. Okay. So we have to understand how AI technology arrives at a decision. I mean, that's crucial. So AI ethics encourages building transparent AI models that can be explained. All right. So what are some of the fundamental principles of an AI ethics framework? So I think I maybe have five or six of these fundamental principles that I would just like to highlight. And you will find, irrespective of whose AI technology you leverage, all of them will have an AI ethics guide. All right. So if you're using Microsoft's technology, Microsoft has an AI ethics guide. If you're using AWS's technology, AWS has exactly the same thing. But what I want to do here is I don't want to talk too much about specific vendors right now. I want to talk about the framework of ethics. Okay, so the first one is fairness and non-discrimination. Okay, so I think the two go quite hand in hand. But imagine we're working with an AI tool that is going to approve loans. So we're looking at a home loan approval tool. Okay, so what we would expect it to do is to assess creditworthiness based on financial data and not on other factors. Okay, so maybe based on your credit score, for example, and not other factors such as what race you belong to, or what gender you are, or in what area you might live. Right. So it's about treating everybody equally, and avoiding what we would refer to as a societal bias or a social bias, right? So that's the idea of fairness and non-discrimination. Challenges. Okay, challenge number one, of course, AI systems can inherit and amplify biases present in data that we didn't use to train them. So biased data can lead to discriminatory outcomes, of course, like unfairly rejecting a home loan based on some type of demographic. Okay, so what's the solution to this challenge? De-bias algorithms. Okay, use a variety of data sets. Use diverse data sets when you're training your model. This will help you mitigate bias. Back to that young lady who asked me about Africanizing AI, and you know, I never considered Africanizing AI until she asked me the question and highlighted some biases in data sets. And then we went back and we traced it, and it turns out that indeed the bias was inadvertently built in because it wasn't trained on data that is specific to our context. Rather, it was trained on data that was specific to a different context. So there's the first thing that I would say, is implementing fairness and non-discrimination. Right. Next pillar, which I would consider to be a pillar, a guiding principle, perhaps. If you allow me, the way that I would describe a guiding principle is in terms of religion. If you're a Christian, you have the Ten Commandments. If you are from the Islamic faith, you have the 5 fundamental principles of Islam. If you are a Buddhist, I think there are 4 guiding principles for Buddhism. If you are Hindu, there are those 12 fundamental guiding principles for Hinduism. So if you're a Muslim, for example, one of your guiding principles is always going to be prayer, charity. If you're a Christian, you're not going to go around, I don't know, coveting somebody else's wife. I think that's one of them, right? Another one, thou shalt not kill, and things like that, right? So they are fundamental building blocks of that religion. And that is what these guiding principles should be. They should be the fundamental building blocks of your AI services and your AI solutions. I dare say that you should not be providing an AI service if it doesn't adhere to these 5 fundamental principles. What's the first one? The first one was fairness and non-discrimination. The second one is transparency. Okay. Imagine imagine a black hole. Okay. Just imagine a piece of paper, and on the paper there's a circle, and that circle was printed on the paper, and that circle is black. That's what I think of as a black hole. All right. Now imagine that you've applied for a job, and this black hole comes back and tells you that you're qualified for the job. Okay, it doesn't give you any explanation at all. It just says that you are qualified for the job. Right. Now, how do you know that your qualifications are better or worse than anybody else's qualifications? All right. Now imagine this black hole coming back and telling you you are not qualified for the job. It doesn't explain anything to you. It just says, sorry, mate, you're not qualified for the job. Okay. So transparency allows us to understand how AI reached its decision. Okay. Not that the decision was made, but how AI arrived at the decision. Right. What is the challenge? Well, AI is dependent on very complex AI algorithms. And those AI algorithms can be very, very difficult to understand, even if you are an expert. I can, for example, explain to you how deep learning would use a neural network to be able to do character recognition. But I can't tell you how generative AI in the form of Copilot arrived at the creation of our PowerPoint slides. I need things to be transparent, because if things aren't transparent, I tend not to trust them. Okay, so because these algorithms are very, very complex, it's actually quite challenging to explain how AI reached specific decisions, as in our PowerPoint slides. How did AI decide what to include and what not to include in our PowerPoint slides? I can't explain that, right? But what I can do is I can do a little bit of research into the different methods that are used by the AI services, okay, that I can then use to explain the reasoning in a way that other people can understand, right? This might involve me being able to influence the decision that people make as to whether they want to use an AI system or not. All right. So that's a fundamental principle, I think. You often find that people are afraid of AI because they don't know how it works. Because they don't know how it works, they don't trust it. Okay. What I've done on many occasions is I've looked at the results. For me, AI is just a tool. AI is not going to do my work. What AI is going to do the heavy lifting for me. But ultimately, I would decide whether AI gave me the result that was useful or not. Next one, data protection. Okay. Again, the answer is, well, the difficulty is our personal data is often used to train AI, like at NetCampus. Okay, at NetCampus, we of course utilize AI extensively. We utilize AI internally. We also utilize AI in some of our learner programs. So we would run a learner program where we're collecting demographic information, all kinds of information about the people who are using it. Demographic is not right, because demographic seems to imply that I'm concerned about things like gender and sexuality and race. Those things don't bother us at all. What bothers us is how are the learners learning? How do they prefer to learn? And then what we have is we have an AI system that builds a learning path using different technologies that I would then approve or not approve. Okay. But that data is using information, that data is exposing information about our individual learners. Data protection is a serious business. Our personal data is often used to train AI systems. And this pillar emphasizes the importance of handling data responsibly. Okay. Data collection is, data collection is often intrusive. Where we store the data is often not clear. Who has access to the data is often not clear, right? And there's also the risk that the data could be used for unintended purposes, right? I'm always concerned about that. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is clear regulations around data collection, data storage, and data usage. That's the solution. Okay, individuals should have control over their data. Individuals should give permission or not give permission, right? So they should be able to opt in or opt out of how we use the data and of how the AI is allowed to use the data. Robust cybersecurity measures are necessary to protect sensitive data. My biggest concern, one of my big concerns, probably close to the top 3 of my concerns, is not that somebody steals my data. It's that somebody steals my data and uses it in an untoward fashion. Okay, that's my biggest concern. Another fundamental pillar for ethics as regards to artificial intelligence is going to have to be explainability. I think maybe it is actually a word. It's explainability. It kind of goes hand in hand with transparency. And the key focus here is on making AI decisions understandable, not theoretically understandable, okay, but actually explainable to those that are going to be affected by it. Okay, so we have a scenario perhaps where we have a student on one of our programs. It's a cybersecurity program, and his program looks completely different from somebody that he's been chatting to. And he wants to understand why those differences are there. What made us look at this learning path for him rather than the same learning path for his friend and colleague. So I need to be in a position, because that decision was made by an AI system. So I need to be in a position where I can look at the data that AI was fed, and I can practically explain the difference between the decision that was made for him and the decision that was made for his colleague. If you can do that, then we have explainability. Again, it goes back to how complex these AI models can be. Okay, and being able to explain how they arrive at a specific decision, right? And being able to be very technical in that explanation, but being able to translate that technical explanation into something that people can understand, right? So that's explainability for me. And then human autonomy and control. Remember, and I think I've mentioned it a couple of times before, remember that AI is a tool, and that tool is there to empower people. AI is not there to replace people, right? The pillar over here called human autonomy and control, it emphasizes that humans should remain in control of AI systems and be able to override their decisions when necessary, such as, I'm going out on a limb here by using these PowerPoint slides without actually having confirmed the results. Right. Fortunately, I kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about most of the time, so I'm pretty comfortable with that. But I don't want this year to dictate what my presentation is and what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say. This is just a tool. I am the human being. I am in control. I decide whether I want to use this tool or not use this tool. I decide the extent to which I'm going to use the tool or not use the tool. Right. So the fact is that AI is becoming more and more sophisticated, right? More and more sophisticated. And there is this risk of over-reliance on the decision-making capability of AI, such as what to include in the presentation and what not to include in the presentation. Or if you're looking at financial data and we're using AI to analyze the financial data, we are over-reliant on it, and we can't analyze the financial data or interpret the financial data that was analyzed by AI. So now what I'm doing is I'm giving up that control. Okay, so the fundamental here is that humans should remain in control. A very good example of maybe a safety critical application would be an autonomous vehicle, right? So you must have override capability of the autonomous vehicle. So you must be able to, so to speak, flip a switch and take back control. Right. So not only are there fundamental pillars that we build our AI services on, so I just have to keep an eye on my clock as well, because it's still a lot I want to share with you and show you. I wish we had 6 hours together, honestly. Everything is not always great. Okay, so there are certain challenges associated with AI, and I think what they've done is they've listed some of those challenges for us, and maybe what I can do is I can just talk a little bit about each of those challenges. The first challenge is what they think of as opacity. Okay. AI systems often operate like that black circle that was printed on the piece of paper. Right. What that means is that these AI systems often operate without us having a clue about their operation. So it's very difficult for users and other stakeholders to understand how decisions are made, why certain outcomes are produced. Lack of transparency usually leads to some other challenges, such as bias and fairness. Okay. The next one, they talk about cybersecurity risks. For me, I would classify these as attacks and breaches. Okay. AI is prone to what they refer to as adversarial attacks. Okay. What is an adversarial attack? This is where I take two AI systems and put them against each other. Right. A very good example thereof is I have no idea on how to hack a website. But I tell you what, people are using artificial intelligence to attempt to hack websites, which other people are using artificial intelligence to protect their websites that are being hacked by other artificial intelligence systems. All right. So you need to ensure that you build in safeguards to prevent that from happening. Maybe a silly little demo is go ahead and bring the netcampus.com website down by using any means necessary. Whoops. Sorry, I can't type and spell at the same time. I'm pretty confident that's not how you spell necessary, but I'm sure that it will interpret it appropriately. Okay. You see there? That's the idea of attacks and breaches and putting in the appropriate safeguards in your AI systems so that they do not go ahead and perform activities which are destructive. Okay, something else that I've seen over here quickly, if I can do that, is they talk about algorithm biases. A bias is usually presented in the training data. Sometimes in the algorithm. The algorithm, remember, that's the decision-making process, and you can get unfair results or discriminatory outcomes. Okay, those biases are going to lead to misrepresentation, underrepresentation, overrepresentation, which in turn results in some type of lack of fairness, which in turn goes against our fundamental principle of fairness. Okay. They talk a little bit about ethical accountability, yet another challenge, right? I think this is maybe more than just biases and discrimination and privacy violations and safety hazards, right? Let's imagine we have a AI system that was developed and it is doing all of those nasty things. It is discriminatory in its decision making. It does violate privacy. There are safety hazards, right? So what we want to be able to do is we want to be in a position where the stakeholders or the developer, the organization, the deployer thereof, we need to be in a position where they have to take responsibility. Okay, they have to be able to take responsibility in the way that they deploy artificial intelligence. In the lack of cybersecurity that they've implemented, right? We want that to be able to occur. And then of course there's the idea of risk management, right? So risk management, there are many risks that arise during the development of AI, system failures, errors, unintended consequences, and these things have to be addressed, right? You have to carefully consider things like safety risk, okay? Management strategies of your artificial intelligence systems. Those are things that I think are really critical and crucial. So I know I'm getting close to running out of time, but I wanted to highlight that for you. Okay, ethics is a subject that we can talk about for the next 6 weeks. But something else that I also wanted to highlight for you very quickly. So as you can see, I have lots of different things that I've done with AI. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight for you is over here. Okay, I had to do a talk on artificial intelligence and what role artificial intelligence plays in an organization. And if you allow me to, let me just move that around a little bit. If you allow me to, I just want to spend a few minutes looking at that. Please, if you are interested in another session like this, please communicate it. I'm very happy to come and talk to you about some of these things in more detail if that's what you would like me to do. All right. So why should your business use AI? Why should any business consider using AI? All right. Well, I think there are two key advantages to leveraging artificial intelligence. And I think the first advantage is AI can help us build better, smarter products and services. You want a very good example? A creepy crawly that has artificial intelligence built in, just like the vacuum cleaner that I'm using. Right? Nobody is doing that. I suspect nobody is doing that at the moment. There's a perfect example to produce a new product which can add value to our consumers. Okay, so there's one example. The other examples are things like the robots and self-driving cars and so on. Right. The other reason you might consider using artificial intelligence is for better business operations. So for me, I use AI all the time to improve my business operations. Right. Very often, the things that take place in the background, the creation of the PowerPoint slides, as an example, those are often hidden from people. Okay. And these are actually the things that provide a great customer experience. But the amount of time and effort that we put into performing those back office or those behind the scenes operations, I mean, I could certainly use my time a lot better. So by using something like artificial intelligence, I can certainly improve that. Okay. Now these two, what shall we call them? These two advantages, they often overlap. So perhaps there's never kind of a really clear distinction between them. But let's think about the production of smarter products. Okay. I can have smarter customer service through the application of co-pilots. We used to call them chatbots in the past, but a chatbot seems to be I chat, you respond. Copilot is slightly better than that, because not only can I ask a question and get a response, actions can also be undertaken. All right. So the first thing that I can say is smart assistants, co-pilots that can be developed that will allow our users to interact with our services in ways that we weren't able to imagine before. Okay, imagine you're running a small little company like NetCampus. In the grander scheme of things, NetCampus is quite a small organization, and we have hundreds of people contacting us on a daily basis. Doesn't it make more sense for me to develop a smart co-pilot, which I can then embed in my website and have that website act as an interface between the hundreds of users who are contacting us and us, the business organization? All right. So things like chatbots and co-pilots, customers can now interact with companies in real time to resolve complaints, even place orders, get more information, and do all of the things that usually would require them to have a conversation with somebody in customer services or customer support. Okay, so that's one of the examples of how I can leverage something like an AI solution in my organization. My wife uses this extensively now. Think in terms of predictive analysis. Okay, so I mean, predictive analysis is quite a broad area, but as an example, think about product recommendations. Okay, you're going to Takealot and you're doing some shopping on Takealot, and the next time you visit Takealot or while you are shopping, you receive additional product recommendations based on your interest and what you've selected before. There's an organization, they're called Siemens AG. Okay, they're one of the biggest railway infrastructure providers in the world. All right, and they use something called IoT, or the Internet of Things. So what you have to remember about the Internet of Things, we have devices that are connected to networks and have the ability to report their status to this network. Devices that were never connected to networks before. So imagine you have these devices connected in, for example, on a locomotive of a train, right? And we are collecting all of this data, and we can analyze this data, right? We can then estimate the reliability of our trains, repair assets before they break down, provide other rail operators with uptime guarantees, as an example, right? That's certainly something that we could use, we could extensively use ourselves, I would think. Right. And one of the other aspects and how you could leverage this in your organization is personalized marketing. Okay. How do you grow a company's revenue? Right. You need to understand what your customers want. Okay. You need to understand what your customers need. Okay. And you need to be able to market those products to those customers. You don't want to market products to customers who don't want or need those products. So we can obtain data from many online activities, and this is already happening, from many online activities performed by our customer, and we can then go ahead and we can predict and target who to market a particular product to in order to increase the chances of sales and the effectiveness of our marketing campaigns. All right. Okay. And that brings us to the end of that section. That section, I try to highlight a couple of things for you there. So the first thing I tried to highlight came from the section that we covered before, or the lesson that we covered before. In that lesson, we spoke about the history of AI, and there were a couple of questions which got me to demonstrate how to use generative AI to simply create a simple PowerPoint presentation. All right. And I happened to use that PowerPoint presentation as part of the ethics and safety discussion. And I also wanted to highlight some specific areas in which we could use artificial intelligence. Now, this brings me to my favorite section, my favorite area of conversation. My favorite area of conversation is AI in action, right? And because this is a Microsoft-sponsored event, I think Microsoft underwrites the event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit about Copilot. Right. Now, I'm not going to use Copilot in my browser over here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close Copilot down. I think I just have to sign in again quickly because I do need authentication for this. All right. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some really simple things. And when I say they are really simple things, perhaps to you, they're not that simple. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to try my best to grab hold of Outlook. Okay. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And this is my company Outlook. All right. And I'm not such an avid user of Outlook, so and I find it very difficult to find things in Outlook. All right, so I've just switched my Outlook to the new look and feel of Outlook. If you are not in the new look and feel of Outlook, then you're not going to have the Copilot icon available. All right, so just be aware of that. I am in the new look and feel of Outlook. Now, one of my typical challenges is to find something that I'm looking for. And I know I have a search bar over here, but let's go and search for Tazaya. Okay, so Tazaya Kombrug, she's the person that firmly believes that she's my boss. And I know she sent me an email. I, for the life of me, can't remember what the email was and what date she sent it to me. So I often find it very difficult to go and find things in Outlook. So one of the great features over here is Copilot. I can ask Copilot and chat with Copilot quickly. All right. And I kind of know what it is Tazaya sent me an email about. I just don't remember when it was or what the contents was. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Copilot to go and do something for me. All right. So it says find relevant documents based on a particular email. It's not quite what I want. So I'm going to say summarize. Guess that's how we'll spell summarize. Summarize all the emails that Zaya sent me about office hours. Right. So I'm pretty new at NetCampus. I haven't been there that long. I'm sure she sent me some emails about office hours. I just can't remember where they were or what they said. Okay. So there we go. Okay, office hours. Tazaya emphasized the importance of adhering to long-standing office hour requirement is mandatory on Mondays, regardless. And if I click on that, I suppose that will take me to the particular email. Right. So I thought, that, yes, okay, I know that was something that was quite simple, but I thought this was actually quite a useful feature in Copilot, simply because I struggle finding emails myself. Something else that is quite useful is trust you are well. Let me respond to Tazaya over here. Okay. So what do we have? Let's take that email. Let's open up that email quickly, and then let's go ahead and reply to Tazaya. And maybe what we'll do is, hey, look, if I put a front slash in, it gives me access to some Copilot features. So that's quite a nifty trick. If I go to Copilot over here, of course, I can go drafting directly from there. But because I've got the new version or the new look and feel of Outlook, I should just be able to do that. And then I should say draft with Copilot. All right. What do you want this email to say? I'll tell Tazaya to go to hell. Okay. I'm not sure that is an appropriate response to Tazaya, but there's some ethics. Copilot can't generate high quality content for this. Okay, got it. Thank goodness. And we'll say, just tell Tazaya that we need to discuss this further. All right, let's see if Copilot can generate something for me. All right. Hi, Tazaya. I appreciate your detailed. Oh, look at that. I would just have said, can we talk about it? I'm not happy. But maybe this is perhaps a better way of addressing Tazaya's concerns. However, I believe it would be beneficial for us to discuss this further. Man, look at that. Professional. And of course, we can change the tone of it if we like, and all of those wonderful things. I'm, of course, not going to send that because I'm not really that worried about it. So those are some of the really simple things that we can do with AI. Here's another really simple thing that we can do with AI. And this is in, well, it's simple, but it's not simple. So let me create two sheets over here. Let me get rid of that one. And let's sit over here and let's create a table. Okay. So in my table, what I want is I want to be able to map courses and students who attended courses with the facilitators who presented it. Okay. So I'm going to just record some information. So I'm going to say course name, nothing special. We'll have a description like that. And then I'll show you something spectacular. And then what we'll want to do is we'll say number of attendees, and then we'll say facilitator. Okay, so whoever the facilitator or the presenter was. And then what I'm going to do is course name. I'm just going to make up some things over here, and my course name will be green. We attended the green course. The description is going to be green, and we'll have a number of attendees. and then the facilitator was going to be F-001. All right, and then what we'll do is we'll have a blue one. All right, and we'll try blue, and then we'll have 321, and the facilitator was F-002, and then we'll do one more. Red is probably a good one, and then we'll try another red over there, and then our number of attendees will be that, and the facilitator will be F-00. Let's do it 001. Okay, so this is the typical problem that I run into every so often. So somewhere over here, I'm going to have to go to, I guess, data, and is it data? How do you format something as a table, do you think? Translate. Who's going to help me format this as a table? So I know there's like a really quick shortcut to format it as a table. Ah, just like it. I don't know. All right. So why don't I do this, and why don't we go there, and then we ask Copilot quickly, and we tell Copilot, turn on autosave for that document quickly. We'll just call this demo like that. Sorry, this is on my hard drive. I should have put it in my OneDrive, of course. And then we'll say, turn this into a table. Let's see if it can turn it into a table for me. Right, understanding my data. Okay, coming up with some suggestions. And select a, okay, so I know I can select that. Go to the insert ribbon. So we can go insert, and then there's a table. Okay, and then we'll say, okay, oh, well, that wasn't, I mean, I didn't know how to create a table, but now suddenly I know how to create a table. But there's even more. Okay, so that table now has a name. I guess it'll be called table 1. Let's create another table over here, and then we'll say facilitator ID, and we'll have name. Okay, so facilitator ID will be F001, and name will be me. Okay, and then we'll have F-002, and then it will be my colleague Olisi Zulu. Okay, my good friend Benny. And then what we'll do is we'll do that. And I can kind of remember, because, you know, I kind of remember how to do this now. We go there and we insert our table and we say that. But yeah, I think it's much easier if I just did that quickly. I kind of know what tables should look like. Oops, I kind of know what tables are. So we should be able to do that, and we should be able to delete that. And hopefully if we go to sheet 2, sheet 2 looks good. Okay, so what's my point? Well, what I want to do is I don't want to see the facilitator ID. I want to see the facilitator name. Okay, now if you know anything about Excel, you know that you can do this with a VLOOKUP or an XLOOKUP. I don't know anything about Excel. I don't know what these XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP things are. And even if I ask Copilot to tell me what an XLOOKUP is, well, I'm probably not going to understand it, right? But if you bear with me, I should be able to do this. Using the data in table 1 and table 2, can you show me the name of the facilitator? Okay. I think it's table 1 and table 2. Right. Okay, and then what I could do is I could just go ahead and I can say, well, insert that column for me. Thank you very much. I don't know anything about XLOOKUP, but there's the XLOOKUP function, so don't expect me to. Now, you know, my boss, he's a super smart guy. He has a PhD in maths, and he's an Excel guru. And I showed him this function, and he said to me, Trevor, let me show you. And he clicked about 3 times and he had the same result. And I said to him, well, that's fantastic that you can do it, but I can't do it. And 100,000 other people can't do it. But if you give me Copilot, I can tell Copilot what it is I want, and Copilot will go ahead and do the heavy lifting for me. So I don't have to worry about all these formulas that are floating around in your head. You know, my brain is like a glass. It only has X amount of capacity, a glass that you pour liquid into. It only has X amount of capacity, and at the moment it's full. So I'll have to remove something to put in all those formulas you would want me to know. No, thank you. I'll just go ahead and I'll use Copilot to do all of that heavy lifting for me. And that's exactly what we did over here. All right. So yet another example of how somebody who works in a financial department might be able to leverage Copilot to help them transform the data that they work with. But that is still something that I consider to be relatively straightforward and something that perhaps I can do relatively easily. There are other things that I can do to make my life a lot easier if I just had the capability, but I don't know how to do it. So here's an example. Okay, there is a product out there. This happens to be called Microsoft Power Automate, right? And what Power Automate allows me to do is automate mundane tasks. Now, normally, if I would want to use Power Automate, what I would do is I would either go to my flows. So they talk about automation as flows, something that runs over and over and over. And there I can create a new flow. Or I can go to create and I can create the new flow. Right, what is a flow? An automated task that will interact into many different sources or source data. Okay. Now, if I go home over there, look at that. Create your automation with Copilot. So I know what I want to do. I made the mistake of telling people why I wanted to do it, but this is what I want to do. Okay. I have an Excel spreadsheet. And in that Excel spreadsheet, I have a list of email addresses. Okay, I don't necessarily have one. So let me create an Excel spreadsheet with a list of email addresses quickly. Okay, let's just see if maybe we have an email address one here. Email, student list. There's a student list. Okay. So I want to automatically send these students an email. Okay, I don't want to have to sit and open up the Excel spreadsheet and there's all the email addresses. Obviously, these are fake, and that's why I have my email address in there. Okay, so I have a student list. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to send each of those students an email address about a specific topic. I know it can be automated, I just don't know how to automate it. But lo and behold, you don't need to, because we have the built-in capability of Copilot. So I'm going to tell Copilot, please create an email that retrieves the email address from a list in Excel. Right. There we go. Right. So what Copilot is going to do, as an AI tool, Copilot says, we will trigger this on a button. So you have to click it. Then we'll go and fetch rows in a table in Excel. Right. And then we'll send an email based on the rows that we fetched. Do you want to keep it? Is there another version of it? Yes. Okay, this one, button, list rows in a table, for each send an email. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep that one. So it even gives me some choices. I'm going to say that's AI generated, but I like it. So I think that was good. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep that flow. Now for this, it needs to be able to connect to Excel and it needs to be able to connect to my Outlook. It's already connected because I'm signed in, and I'm going to sit and create the flow. Okay. And now you notice that it's a Copilot. It's not going to do the work for you. It'll do the heavy lifting, but I can figure out what has to happen now. I see that there's something called a manual trigger. And then we have a list present in a table. So I didn't tell it which table though. So if I go over there and I go to location, I should be able to see if there's a, I should have a Trevor's SharePoint. Is there a Trevor's SharePoint, do you think? Let's go to my OneDrive for Business. Okay, and then let's go, we don't need a document library. I think that we'll just grab hold of OneDrive. And then the file that I want to use, okay, I think I've got a whole bunch of folders there. Maybe the file is in the root folder. So I should be able to just front slash it. And then, okay, we don't need dynamic content. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go there. I'll find a folder. Okay. Right. And then hopefully we'll be able to, it's just a bit slow. Sorry. I'm accustomed to things motoring along when I click. Okay. I'm just going to use that one quickly. And then what we'll do is there is a table in it. Okay. There's table 1. So now you see that now we have parameters. So it says, I was able to connect to table 1. And what do you want to do now? Well, I want to send an email for each of the things that I find in table 1. What should the email include? Well, we have to have a to value, right? Now, I'm just going to switch to advanced view here, because if I have a to value, you'll notice I can now select that little icon. And if I select that little icon over there, I have an email address as a column in that table. Okay. So for each of the rows in that table, I'm going to send an email to that address. We need a subject line. So I'm going to say, hello world, for lack of anything better. And then I need a body. Now, the great thing with this is I can use dynamic values. So I can use, for example, the full address. Okay, now what is that full address? That full address is where the device is that I clicked that button from. And lo and behold, look at that. I don't know anything about Power Automate, but I can use Copilot to help me create these automated flows. And if I wanted to, I can just change its name over here. All right, and we'll say demo dash, please create that flow, and we should be able to do that. Okay. AI in action. So a little bit more spectacular than being able to create an XLOOKUP and updating a column in Excel, which in turn was a little bit more spectacular than being able to find an email that Desaya sent me and create a response and turn the response into a more professional response. You know how it is sometimes when you send people an email, they feel like you are the tone of your email is not appropriate. I don't have to worry about tone anymore. I ask Copilot, I'll draft it, I'll ask Copilot to convert it for me, and then I'll tell Copilot what tone I want. Should it be friendly or professional? Okay. But still, yes, those things are nice, okay? But still, that's not the beginning and end all of what AI has to offer me. I, for example, need to create an application that will keep track of student information. Okay, so what I've got over here is I've got Microsoft's Power Apps. A Microsoft Power Apps, fantastic application or rapid application development platform. I just don't know enough about Power Apps to be able to use it effectively. Okay, so I can use Power Apps in a number of different ways, but over here I see it says create a solution for almost any business problem. Okay, so I'm on the home page over there, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to say create an application. Okay, let me do it appropriately. Let's first set the context. I am a sales person working at NetCampus. I need to collect details of people I meet at a conference being held. Please create an application that will allow me to collect the most common information from these attendees. Okay. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay, still busy, still busy. Processing suggested what? Processing suggested tables. This will go and create the tables in a database and create the application that sits on top of those tables that allows me to insert the data into those tables. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and accept. All right. I don't know anything about databases. I don't know the way that I would previously have done it is I would just have put it into an Excel spreadsheet, to be honest with you. Okay. So let's make those changes. Okay. And hopefully, it's just a little bit on the slow side. When you're ready, select the plus icon to create and it will, so do you see a plus icon anywhere? Okay, that's where we had create. And we'll save it. I'll save it. All right. And I guess that's the view. Sorry, they've just changed the interface 2 days ago. And data, I guess what we can do is we can say, save the tables. Right. And if we wanted to know what the details were in the tables, of course, we could go and see the details of the tables. There we go. All of this automatically generated for me, right? There's the common information that we wanted about an attendee. There's the common information that we needed about a particular salesperson, right? I've now, sorry, it's still saving the data, but once it's saved the tables, I'll be able to go ahead and I'll create my application. Easy, simple, straightforward, artificial intelligence in action, giving me the capability to perform tasks that I was never able to perform in the past, allowing me to focus on the things that are important. If you ask me, Trevor, what are the things that are important? The things that are important for me is focusing on high levels of customer service. That's what is important to me. Creating these tables and Excel spreadsheets, I couldn't care less. And that's why I have AI do the heavy lifting for me. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, that is all that we have time for. I was really excited to spend a little bit of time with you, showing you my perspective of artificial intelligence, and finally ending up in being able to show you some of the amazing things that are at your fingertips. Some of the amazing things that artificial intelligence allows me to do today that I was never able to do in the past, giving me the capability to be able to do my work better, giving me the capability to focus on what is important for me. For me, it's customer service, right? All these other things, I will allow AI to do the heavy lifting for me. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. All right. And if I just have a quick look over here, it says I have 5 minutes left before Dr. Mkhize is going to Dr. Makamba is going to do our close. I see there's a few things in the Q&A. I'm just having a quick look at the Q&A, and from Phuti, can AI system block you due to suspicion of danger of security or information? Yes, absolutely. Many intrusion detection systems have AI, artificial intelligence built into them, that looks at the data stream, and based on what it considers to be normal versus suspect data, will have the ability to provide a recommendation, or if configured appropriately, will have the ability to block access. Generally speaking, many intrusion detection systems that sit in front of your firewalls, like Network Associate International, they have an intrusion detection system that does exactly that. Right. Frikkie, I hope Frikkie is pronounced right. Are there any recommended AI courses that one can do that does not cost an arm and a leg, for starters? Frikkie, what an amazing question. All right. So what I want to do is, please allow me just to answer this by showing it to you. Okay. So Microsoft, I've been with Microsoft and doing work for Microsoft for a very long time. All right. As a matter of fact, Microsoft is the organization that gave me a break into information technology. Believe it or not, I was in the Defense Force, and after the Defense Force, I studied law and I worked in an attorney's office for a while. And that's where I realized that law wasn't for me. And Microsoft, with their technology and the ease of adoption of their technology, gave me my first break. So the question is, are there any courses that you could do that don't cost an arm and a leg? There are many artificial intelligence courses that you could potentially do, right? Some of them are free and some of them are not. What I would recommend is the following. So I'm just going to show you over here, and I'm just going to go to something. Let's just grab hold of Copilot Foundations. All right. So this is taking me to the Microsoft courseware library, courseware website. This, by the way, is free. This is free. Everybody here, all you need to do is create yourself a Microsoft account. If you have a Hotmail account, like I have a Hotmail account, that was when I was still young, all right? This is free. And here we can see that they have an amazing course, Fundamentals of Generative AI. Wouldn't that be amazing? Let's see what Fundamentals of Generative AI is. Of course, because it is a Microsoft training course, it focuses on Microsoft technology, right? But, you know, it's free. So I'm going to have a look at Generative AI, and I see that it takes about 53 minutes to complete, and there are 11 units associated with it. And I can just go and have a look over here. Right, and there's a little introduction, and there's Generative AI technologies, and I should be able to navigate this without too much difficulty. Natural language generation, okay. There's a code generation. Oh yeah, okay, that's Generative AI does have the ability to generate code for me, so that's pretty amazing. Okay, so those resources are free, and they are all available here from learn.microsoft.com. Okay, this is probably, if you're now looking for something that is absolutely free, where you don't have to invest any money, this is where I would go. This is where I would go. Okay, and if you wanted to search Microsoft Learn for AI, right? Microsoft Ignite, drive AI transformation and learn about AI. Okay, learn.microsoft.com. Anything that you're looking for is available from here. Some of the things that I showed you with Copilot, the simpler things like being able to search an email, learn.microsoft.com, you'll see if I go to maybe courses over here, well, let's go to applied skills over there. No, let's go to courses and we'll see empower your workforce with Copilot use cases. All right, fantastic resource. And can I stress again? Free. Okay. So I hope that helped answer that question. Pumza, I noticed you said please before typing. No, it's not important at all. All right. It's not important at all. It's not going to affect your result in any way, shape, or form. All right. So maybe what I'll do is I'll say create a summary of generative AI. Context is important, okay? So I would always add the context. I wouldn't necessarily want to ask it, please. This is a debate that me and my boss have all of the time. So context would be, I am presenting at a Microsoft event around AI. Create a summary of well, not a summary, I guess. Create an outline that I can use as the basis of the presentation. Okay, and just like that. Okay, so there at least it will give me something. I don't think I'm signed in this. Oh yes, I am signed in that browser. So this could have gotten in anything from my whatever was shared on OneDrive with me. Okay. Yeah. I also would have loved to have 6 hours with you. All right, but that's it. I am done now. I trust that it was informative. What I want to do is I have my window open here. So I'm just going to put a message in the chat window, trevor.jones@netcampus.com. Right. That's how you can get hold of me. If you want to have a chat, please feel free to send me an email. I typically respond to my emails timelessly. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Dino,
Thank you.
I'm going to go and start.
Thank you so much, Trevor. What an insightful presentation and very thought-provoking. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the time that you have shared with us. It is indeed, the change is inevitable, especially in the digital era. I guess now you have emphasized enough that the ball is in our court. It is up to us to take it forward or to be just not taking it anywhere that we want to go and being stagnant. But a change, it is going to happen. So AI is here to teach us that we really need to be adaptive, to be agile, and make sure we change with speed. So we truly appreciate what you have actually elaborated in there for us. And also would like to take this moment and thank our attendees that have managed to come until this time, and also to give a thanks to Microsoft as well, together with the NSG executive. We truly appreciate the amount of time and the effort that you've put in this in ensuring that it's success. Thank you so much. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.